Standing outside the US Embassy in Moscow is a poster of Gonzalo Lira, with one of his quotes reading, "Free speech is a threat to American democracy." And the workers of that embassy have to see his face day in, day out.
Hello everyone, this is a Fox Hunter. There are many people online who think that I should not be making videos about Gonzalo Lira because, well, he is no longer around to defend himself. But I'm gonna tell you right now, those people are grown. And in this video, I'm gonna explain why.
The Fox Hunter.
Now, there is a phrase that says, "It is wrong to speak ill of the dead." Well, this phrase is wrong, and it's not just me saying this. When we enter this phrase in the form of a question in the Google search engine, this is what comes out. The phrase, "do not speak ill of the dead," comes from the ancient Greek, which in Latin reads, "de mortuis nil nisi bonum," which translates to "of the dead nothing but good is to be said," which was coined by Chilon of Sparta around 600 BC. However, Google also says, speaking ill of the dead is generally considered taboo, but there are some situations where it might be necessary. In the case of grieving, some survivors of trauma might need to speak ill of the dead as part of their grieving process. This can help them understand and accept the impact of intergenerational trauma and avoid passing it on to future generations. In the case of compassion, it's generally considered compassionate to avoid compounding the pain of the bereaved. And in the case of establishing the truth, it might be necessary to speak ill of the dead to prevent them from being remembered wrongly or to expose villains. For example, if a public figure's memory is used to promote a cause, or if political people memorialize the dead in a way that establishes their favorite political narrative. This last part is the most fitting to the case of Gonzalo Lira. We all know that Gonzalo Lira voluntarily made the choice of staying in Ukraine and promote Russian propaganda. Now that he's dead, Russian sympathizers are using his image to promote the cause of the fascist terrorist state that is the Russian Federation.
I also want to speak directly to the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin, when you fire missiles into Ukraine hospitals, we know who you are. When you send mercenaries into African countries, we know who you are. When you murder opponents in European cities, we know who you are. Your invasion is in your own interests, yours alone, to expand your mafia state into a mafia empire, an empire built on corruption.
One important fact that needs to be established is the reality that Gonzalo Lira was not a journalist. Now, some people might say that the simple fact that Gonzalo was broadcasting from Kharkov is enough to make him a journalist, but that's not the case. What Gonzalo Lira was doing was filming videos that parrot talking points straight out of Russian channels, with no facts to back up those talking points. Most of his videos were filmed from inside of his apartment because he was under house arrest. He could go to the local stores, but he was not allowed to travel out of the city. But there is one occasion where Gonzalo filmed himself in the streets of Kyiv. This took place on the first days of 2022 Russian invasion. And let me tell you, it is the worst example of an on-site reporting of a so-called journalist. Now let me show you.
And here I am. I don't know if you can see it. I'm here in Maidan Square, here in Kiev. This is a bad angle to shoot this. I should move so the sun isn't behind me. And here, as you can see, look at all the system pigs. Look at all the press people there, gathered up in a scrum, feeding the narrative, feeding the lies that they tell the Western people, feeding all kinds of bullshit. That's the truth of the matter. And here, oh, there's a lone little outpost of the system pigs, you know? Okay, that was a shot fired. That is, wait, I'm waiting. No, that's not an army. That's some random guy with one of the AK-47s that the government handed out, or AK-74s actually. But yeah, that was not small arms exchange between fighters. Those shots were the same gun, and it must be some score settling between criminals, like I said before.
Now, did you see that? A gunshot is heard at the distance, and what does Gonzalo says? Oh, it's probably gangsters settling down all scores. He was not giving you facts. He was speculating with no visual evidence to back up his claims. That's not how journalism is done. The job of journalists is to report facts with substantial evidence to back up their claims. That is dangerous work. Journalism is a profession with high casualty rates because journalists often put their lives in danger while trying to expose the truth. Gonzalo Lira never did this. He was more often inside of his apartment peddling Russian propaganda in a country that had outlawed such practices. But for those who are still on denial and still think that Gonzalo was performing top journalism work, here are some other examples of Gonzalo spreading misinformation. Remember the time that he claimed that Zelensky was going to be assassinated by the United States to turn him into a martyr?
So it looks like Zelensky is about to be assassinated by the Americans. And I know it sounds insane to be saying this, but it's true. I just heard, not 20 minutes ago, I heard that Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, who's the head of the National Security Council, the most important national security aide that President Biden has, and of course, one of the puppeteers behind the Zelensky regime. Well, he said at the Aspen conference, which is a conference of spooks and intelligence types, that Zelensky should be very afraid for his personal safety. Oh, God. I mean, dude, it's unbelievable. He is saying, Jake Sullivan is saying, that Zelensky is going to be killed. The war is lost. The Zelensky regime is panicking. All kinds of palace intrigue is going on. And now Jake Sullivan starts talking about his fear for the personal safety of Zelensky. They're going to take him out. Because, of course, from the point of view of the Americans, it makes more sense to have a dead Zelensky than a living one. Because if they take out Zelensky, the whole country, Ukraine, it collapses into chaos. And in fact, it would be smart for the Americans to assassinate Zelensky while he's having a meeting with his military leadership. So you decapitate all of Ukraine in one blow, and the whole country, the Ukraine army, everything collapses into chaos, total chaos. And so the Russians are going to be stuck with this enormous country that is descending into civil anarchy. That's what the Americans are probably going to do. And of course, they're going to blame the Russians. And they're going to use the mainstream media, the accredited media, to push the narrative that it was the Russians who killed Zelensky. The Russians have no interest in killing Zelensky for a very simple and very pragmatic reason that a lot of people have said, which is, the Russians need Zelensky alive so that he can sign the ceasefire, so that it would give the ceasefire legitimacy. If the Russians wanted to kill Zelensky, he'd be dead already. He would have been dead months ago. He could have been dead on the very first day of the invasion. But the Russians, who could kill him whenever they wanted to, because they have the spies and the missiles to do it, they have not touched him because they need him alive. But Washington no longer needs Zelensky alive. He's more valuable as a martyr because they can point the finger at the Russians and say, the Russians did it! Those evil Ruskies killed Saint Zelensky! And they'll make monuments to Zelensky, and I'm talking literal marble monuments to Zelensky, as a martyr to the evil Russians.
Or how about this time when Gonzalo claimed that Ukraine was going to perform a false flag operation by detonating a dirty bomb so that they could force NATO and escalate the war?
Okay, no fooling around. This is a really important video, to tell you the truth. Over the last 2-3 days, Sergei Shoigu, the Minister of Defense for the Russian Federation, has called, at his initiation, the Secretaries of Defense of the United States and their counterparts in France and the United Kingdom and Turkey. Now, this is officially known. And the subject matter of these conversations is not known specifically, but it is believed that Shoigu said that the Zelensky regime is planning to use a dirty bomb on the territory of Ukraine, that this would be a provocation/escalation. The Zelensky regime forces are at their end. And so, in desperation, the Zelensky regime would use this dirty bomb in Mykolaiv, and this would give the excuse for the Americans to deploy in Odessa. And this would escalate the war into a full-on NATO versus Russia war. I think it was very smart of the Russians to come out with this and say openly that this is what the Zelensky regime is planning to do. I think it is despicable what the Zelensky regime is planning to do, because I will say here, and I don't care, there is no doubt in my mind that this is true.
Yeah, he was a scumbag propagandist. But going back to the point of how important it is to expose Gonzalo Lira, there are people out there who promote Gonzalo Lira as if he was a saint and someone to look after for advice. This is why it's dangerous to stay silent about who Gonzalo Lira really was. He is the one example why it is necessary to speak ill of some dead. Here are two examples to prove my point. We have this YouTuber who makes this following statement.
You know, it's unfortunate what happened to Gonzalo Lira, aka Coach Red Pill, because he was, as far as I could tell, he was a man of principle. Spoke his mind, and when he made content, he considered it his job to tell the truth about what he really believed. And he covered a wide range of topics. He's just a fantastic artist. I consider him an information artist on the level of like Alan Watts or Terence McKenna even.
He was a man of principle, and he was at the level of Alan Watts. Yeah, because Alan Watts is famous for calling women dogs and conning his fans by selling them books that never exist. Now, thankfully, not that many people agree with this guy. Just take a look at the YouTube channels that re-upload all Alan Watts lectures and compare them to channels that re-upload all Gonzalo Lira's videos. People click with Alan Watts far more than they click with Gonzalo Lira. And there is a reason for that. Most people can tell that Gonzalo Lira was a scumbag. But let's check on another example of how much influence can Gonzalo's videos have on other people.
Standing outside the US Embassy in Moscow is a poster of Gonzalo Lira. So as you can see behind me, it's Gonzalo Lira. And there's a photo of him right outside the US Embassy.
Now, you may all be wondering what on earth I'm doing outside the embassy today. Well, I had to come and pay respects to Gonzalo Lira. Gonzalo, God rest his soul, he's the sole reason why I'm in Russia today. I would not be here if it wasn't for Gonzalo Lira. And that's one of the things. I would not have ever thought that I would leave the UK and even leave the West entirely. I would have never dreamt of that idea if it wasn't for Gonzalo's words.
What did I tell you in the last video I posted? I told you, leave the Western democracies now while you still can.
That's right, this British expat claims that Gonzalo Lira is the reason why he decided to move to Russia. But I gotta be honest with you, in this case, I am going to agree with this guy. If you're a Gonzalo Lira fan and you hate the West along with its decadence, please follow this guy's advice and move to Russia. You'll do all of us a favor. Now, just keep in mind, Gonzalo Lira always had the option of moving to Russia, but he never did. And in the end, on the last chance he had to make a run for it and move to Russia, he decided not to take it because he didn't want to abandon his motorcycle. Just keep that in mind for the next time you hear someone to claim that Gonzalo Lira was a genius or that he was at the level of Alan Watts. Well, thank you for watching, and if you like this video, click a like and a subscribe for more. This is a Fox Hunter. Bye bye for now and take care.